Well, we have had a wonderful run the past few months of our growing club, and we get to celebrate that again today with another induction of Rob Calabrisi. So I want to invite a picture of our membership chair, and Maury Hollowell is going to come up as well. And then, of course, Rob and his sponsor, Georgia.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, not right now. Pass that to him in a little bit. Okay, good afternoon. Today we have the privilege of welcoming our new member, Robert Calabrisi, into the Rotary family. Joining a Rotary Club is more than just becoming part of an organization. It is an opportunity to connect with like-minded individuals who are dedicated to service, fellowship, and making a positive impact in our community and across the world. By joining Rotary, you are becoming part of a global network of leaders united in the mission to provide humanitarian service, uphold high ethical standards, and promote goodwill and peace. We believe you share these values and will contribute your skills, passion, and energy to our efforts. To get us started, we're going to have sponsor Georgia Moon come up and just say a few words.
Well, first I'd like to say I'm really proud to be Bob's sponsor. I met him through his daughter Melinda. She worked at my office, and I'm so glad we connected because he's going to be fabulous for our club. Boy, when I read his bio, it really blew my mind. Honestly, I even cried because there were many things about Bob that I didn't know. On a personal note, I didn't know he was a pilot. Didn't know that he was an animal activist. That did you fly the pilot, the plane that saved animals?
I would fly into locations. I think I did about 12, 13 crew dogs.
Wow,
Yes.
amazing. And of course, he's working with the Veterans Association.
Health Administration.
Oh, Health Administration. I'm gonna let him tell you all about that, but I just like to say that I'm so proud to be your sponsor, and I know you're gonna have a great time here.
Finally, another pilot in the club. Anyhow, thank you. Good introduction. As a Rotarian, you will have the chance to engage in service projects, build lasting friendships, and grow as a leader. In return, we ask that you embrace the spirit of Rotary by participating actively in sharing your ideas and upholding our guiding principles of the Rotary four-way test. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? Will the club membership please stand? Your sponsor will now present you with your Rotary lapel pin.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just in closing, it's now my pleasure to officially welcome you into the Dunedin Rotary Club. We encourage you to connect with your fellow Rotarians, seek guidance from your sponsor, and get involved in our committees and projects. You are now part of something bigger, a worldwide community of service and fellowship. Fellow Rotarians, please join me in extending the right hand of Rotary Fellowship by giving a warm welcome to our newest member.
Just as Georgia was saying, I was a pilot. I still am, but I don't fly as much because I moved to Florida. But, and then I worked for the VA, the one that's always on the news. And, and I'm also an adjunct professor at St. Pete College. I teach there either in the evenings, sometimes face-to-face, but mostly online. And I was on staff at Lake Erie College of Osteopathic Medicine. I was on staff there for a while. And then it just got to be too much. So I live right here. I live about a mile from here, right on the course. So, and I'm happy to be here.
I've got a critical question. Do you prefer Rob or Bob?
Any three, let go. Bob's, I don't really care.
Very good. Do you mind if I get a little picture? Get all of you together. Excellent. Smile for me on 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. That you do it. Everybody's a winner in there. Oh, it is great, wonderful to be able to welcome you into our Rotary. Got a little break in the action, so I will take this opportunity to introduce our speaker today. Though, to borrow David Lippman's line, perhaps he is somebody who needs no introduction, but that I'll do it anyway. And that is, of course, to introduce our own Tom Dugard. Tom himself, born and raised in Memphis, if I remember correctly, started his career in healthcare, but relatively shortly headed off into the nonprofit world and served as an executive for United Way in a variety of cities across the country. Retiring as the head of United Way in St. Louis, if I remember correctly, Kansas City, the other side of Missouri, before he and his wife, Lana, came here and settled here into Dunedin. And of course, he also holds the distinction recently as being one of our most recently elected city commissioners. And that's what I believe, Tom, you're going to speak of today, of your start as a city commissioner, on the city commission. So, Tom.
Julie asked me to talk about my first 100 days. The only problem with that is it's all a blur. I assure you, it's much more of a blur in my mind than you can imagine. I'm going to put this on the side. So I really want to talk about who I can blame for getting me in this role. Tom Anderson asked me to do this. And by the way, I know some of you don't know Tom, but he's a past mayor, state representative, city commissioner himself. If you ever meet Tom, you know you've met somebody that's meaningful. I mean, he's just one of those people that you go, oh, I wish I was more like that. And when somebody like that comes to you and says, I think you should run for city commission, you just don't cast it aside. Now, the first time he asked me to do it, I told him no, there were just things going on in my life, didn't make any sense. So 2 years later, he asked me again, and things had straightened out. And so I said, I'll give it a shot, at least a consideration. Went home, talked to my spouse, who said, are you crazy? By the way, that line was the line everybody said when I said I'm considering ... Are you crazy? And by the way, the bells go off when you say that. The problem is I had no good answer for him. And he said, if you really want to make a difference, you need to do this. And I said, well, I thought I was doing pretty good with Rotary, with their association, board membership. Because now this is the community service you want to get into. And so I gave it some thought. I talked to a small group of people in this very room. We assembled right next door, and I said, I'm thinking about doing this run. And they all said in unison, are you crazy? And then they said, we think you might be a good commissioner. I then talked to the current mayor, the prospective 2 mayors. I talked to people I trusted. And I decided to run, and I was told immediately, now keep it a secret, which is kind of an interesting response. Don't tell anybody you're doing this. And the reason you don't do that is because of what are known as treasury reports, which is, by the way, one of the logistic things every candidate has to do. And you don't want to have to file a treasury report any sooner than necessary, because treasury reports are onerous, they're detailed, and you have to document all your contributions through. But by the way, the most critical thing in a campaign for a commissioner is their treasurer. And let me tell you, that's a hard person to find. It's thankless, it's detailed, and you can be sued. I mean, you talk about a job that you really don't want to have. But to my good fortune, John Freebourne said yes. But he said, I won't be your treasurer, I'll be your assistant treasurer. And that way you get sued first, and I'll just be there and defend you. So I filed in February, started my treasury reports right then. And then I'm told you need to raise about $20,000. And I said, no, I can run a campaign for less than $20,000. You know what it cost me? $22,000. $22,000. And strangely enough, people gave me that money. I, to this day, am awed at all those people that wrote checks to me. By the way, there's a limit. You can't write a check individually for more than $1,000. So you at least know that there's 22 people out there that think enough of me to give me money. I was so impressed. And one of them said, I'm giving you this to you so you'll just get off my back. So Tom Anderson is my first and foremost instigator. John Freebourne is my second. And in third place, let's see who we got here. All time for third place: Tom Murphy, Dave Kelly, Pastor Dave Sheever, Julie Scales, Bill Francisco, Pat Bauer, Cindy Cole, Maury Hollowell, Dina Hurst, Tammy Hessler, Chuck. You think this is a membership list for the Rotary Club? It is. It is. Melissa McCormick, one of our past members, still a member, I think. Kent McCrae, who I all know and love, he's now in Arkansas. He decided after I got elected to leave town. Ken Rico, and many more. And by the way, the one thing you learn when you're running for office is you can't have enough friends. And then you find out who your real friends are. The three phases. The consideration phase was interesting. The running phase was much more interesting. You talk to anybody that's done this before you. Julie Scales has done this. Deborah Kynes, who was a member of our club, has done this. You sit down and you ask them how it works. And by the way, the whole experience is a learning curve that never peaks. Because what happens is you get to one learning point and you move up to the next and then the next one. And so there is no break in the curve. It's all learning. And by the way, my goal in life for about 9 months was to get to November 5th and win, if I could. And by the way, the numbers said it was a toss-up. I did something that no candidate in Dunedin had ever done before, because it was something that I was familiar with because of my consultancy. I ran a community survey. And by the way, it shook up the whole town. Nobody had ever done it. On a little software package called WebElect, which, by the way, Jack Latvala, who is a campaign manager, he said, get that software package. I did. It was very helpful for a number of things. But what it was really helpful with is it gave me 12,000 voter email addresses. Now, you might say, how did it do that? When you fill out your ballot every year, on the back of your ballot is a place for optional email address and phone number. About 2/3 of the voters fill that out. That's public information. WebElect has bought it. I bought the software. I got those email addresses. And by the way, it's way down at the back end of the software. If you don't look it's kind of like the key to all the answers is on the back page of the test book. Well, the key to the campaign was in the back of that particular software packet. I looked down there and I said, wait a second, I've got 12,000 email, actually it's a little more than that, 12,000 email addresses. I can run a survey. And so that's part of the skills I came to the table with. I put together a survey, and basically I wanted to know if I could win, because my opponent was in the downtown community. He was a band member. He had good name recognition. Very affable human being. I had the chance to meet him. Born and raised here in Dunedin. Quality guy. And I didn't know if I could beat that. So my first survey had one question that was most important. Could I win? Turned out we were neck and neck on name recognition and favorability, which are two of the things we measure. So I'm saying, okay, it's a race. But up until that time, I wasn't sure I could win. And by the way, if I that come back and he's twice as favorable as you are and more people know him, I probably would have withdrawn. Why spend a lot of people's money on something you can't succeed at? So anyway, we got through the qualifying phase. And by the way, one of the things in the qualifying phase is petitions. Does anybody know about these petitions? If you're going to run for office, and it's a formula on the number of voters in the last general election. In my case, it was 155 petitions where people would sign a petition form asking that you be placed on the ballot. Without that, you don't get on the ballot. Now you think that's easy. 155? Piece of cake. I know I ran out of people at 80. I figured out exactly how many people really wanted me to run, and it was 80. So I started knocking on doors. And by the way, you knock on a lot of doors if you do the campaign right. And it's a contemporary 21st century version of Lady and the Tiger, because you don't know what's on the other side of that door. I mean, literally, the things I saw, you can't talk about. Ladies showing up with virtually just a sheet, nothing else. How you doing? I knocked on a door in this one complex, and they said, "Come in." Cute voice, had to be 80 or so. Wonderful human being. Come in. It was like a mother. I said, "Come in." And this dilemma faces you at the moment. Do you go in? Or do you say, and you gotta go, I don't think it's appropriate. No, come on in. I got cookies. And you realize she's been waiting for anybody for the last 10 years. And you're not getting out if you go in the door. So no, you leave your card, you walk on. So you start walking and knocking on doors. And by the way, it's not 155. You discovered that if everybody hasn't filled out their petition form exactly right, they don't count. So you must get about 200, 225. And you get those and you bring them in. And the clerk, who, by the way, is your best friend during the campaign, other than your treasurer, the clerk is sitting there going, we'll count these and let you know. And so you're sweating out that particular thing. And it's as bad as the election night, knowing that you qualified. I got qualified in the first attempt. My opponent had to go back and get some more done. And it was an interesting reason why he had to get more petition forms. He had worked through the bars, and they'd have people just do it at the bar, as they came in, and that made great sense. Except for one reason, they weren't residents. So he found out that he had to go back and get about 20 more. And I'm watching him scurry around. I'm kind of giggling. I got to tell you, I'm kind of giggling. I'm thinking, okay, this is kind of interesting. So anyway, we all qualify. I was hopeful that he wouldn't make it, of course, because that means get to November 5th and it's a cakewalk. He got qualified, so it's a race. And then it starts getting real interesting, because now it's going to be published. Your name's going to be on a ballot. Fortunately, my name alphabetically was going to go first. And if you get into politics in Dunedin, you learn a couple things about politics. One is a woman will always get more votes up against a man. I don't care what happens in Dunedin. If there is no other piece of information out there. So I was so glad that my opponent was not a woman. Did not want that. So it turned out that, but his popularity was pretty strong. And he ran a strong campaign. Then you learn what are called, the phase is called sign wars. Does anybody remember the sign wars we had last year? Yeah. Oh, Dave Kelly has the best yard in town. I mean, I loved his yard. And by the way, I think one time you had 42 signs in your yard or something like that. He wouldn't say no to anybody. So anyway, we're doing sign wars, but sign wars for us was different because you put them up and then you take them down, and then you put them back up and then you take them down. Guess what? Hurricane. And those signs are expensive little suckers. If you're lucky, you paid $6 a piece for them. And if you buy 250, just do the math. They're expensive. Now, this is where my opponent went a direction that I didn't go. I decided early on, my strategy was major thoroughfares. I only had 250 signs. That's all my budget could afford. So I said, I want to put them in the place where people will be. And that was major thoroughfares. He went a different strategy. His strategy was let them come to the bars, pick them up, and put them in their yards. He didn't have to go out and knock on doors that way. I said, lazy. Great. But guess what happened when the storms came? He had no idea where they were. I just ran up and down the thoroughfares, collected my signs, put them in the back of my car, and waited for the sun to come out. He lost his signs twice. He had to replace his signs twice. Now that difference made a huge difference in the campaign. That's your biggest expense. He had to do it twice. And I only had to buy them once. I had money for something else. And that was mailers. He didn't have money for mailers when it got down to the end of the campaign. I had one mailer because they're so expensive. By the way, you can surprise how expensive running for office is, even in a city of only 36,000. It's incredibly expensive. So that was a difference. Then there was the second survey. Now there's one key event in every campaign in this town that you need to watch. If you want to know the candidates, it's the candidate forum. This last year, it was on the 13th of September. Oh, what a night. Everybody shows up at the Hale Center. All the candidates are there to be grilled by the moderator, and it's going to be videoed and it'll go on YouTube. Now, I didn't know how valuable it was, but I was going to run a survey the next day. And with my IT specialist, a gentleman by the name of Mick Hoover, he and I set it ready, and it was popping out that morning. The next morning, it was on everybody's email. I scored well. Mo Freeney scored well. Steven Sandbergen scored well. The other candidates, not as well. Now, I didn't know how important that piece of information was, but I knew I was in the race on the, well, probably 8 or 9 days after that when I was starting to get the numbers in back on the survey. By the way, on the first survey, we got 900 responses. On the second, we got about 700 even, right in there. By the way, 95% confidence rate, significance factor. For the first one, it was underneath 2, and for the second one, is a little bit more than 2.5. So we were pretty sure that our data was right. And it said, you can win. And you don't know how good that feels. You can win. But then there was a piece that we did that was completely different. When we saw the scores on the forum, we said, we got to get more people to the forum. Now, the forum is, by the way, you can go and see the candidate forum for any year for the last, well, I think up to 2012. So you can go on YouTube and see all the candidate forums. You can go back and see the one from last year if you want to. It's boring, but anyway. As I realized that, I said, I've got to drive people to the forum. So I started knocking on doors, handing out my palm cards, another critical tool. And I would say, why don't you go onto YouTube if you want to see all the candidates, if you're undecided, and see which one you like best. And then I said, that's too hard. I started putting stickers on with the candidate forum address. I would go out and maybe knock on 200 doors. By the way, I knocked on 12,000 doors. 12,000 doors. In fact, one of the strategies I had is I looked for high compression. Now, what is high compression? That means the distance between each door is short. So you start getting those walks in. I would walk, one day I walked 18 miles. 18 miles in a day. And by the way, you're kicked out of some of the nicest places in town. And the people come out, we have a non-solicitation rule in our community. And you go, thank you very much. I appreciate the information. You go knock on the next one. See, that's all you can do. I could go home after I would hand them the palm card with that address and see who clicked on. Not the who, how many. That became intoxicating. Because I'd go hit 200 doors and I'd come back and I'd see 50 hits on the website for the forum, and I'd go, yes. By the way, the number of people that saw the forum, not including those at the Hale Center that night, approximately 1,700. The most that had ever done it was 600. Guess how many votes I won by? 1,700. It was one of those freaky things that the numbers just lined up. In other words, I'm not very likable, but they will vote for me. So that's getting there. By the way, I'll tell you about Victory Night. I didn't call it Victory Night. I called it Liberation or Victory Night, meaning that if I don't get it, I'm liberated. I don't have to worry about the next 4 years. And if I get it, I win. We're at Lucky Lobster. By the way, Tom Murphy was such a good friend for the whole thing. I kept going over there and saying, I've got to pay you something. The treasurer's report won't stand it if you don't take some money from me. He said, okay, I'll take money. I've been over there. We've used that as our campaign headquarters for meetings and things like that. But that night we were there, the front patio was completely full. And I remember it was the Mike and Amanda Bowman walked in and they said, you know, your opponent's down the street at House of Beer and they've got TV cameras. And we all going, what does he know that we don't know? How has he got TV cameras? So he's got TV cameras and they were already going, you must have lost. So here we are. We've been there about an hour or so, and it's coming to 7 o'clock, which is the witching hour. They don't let out the first votes until about 7:15. And so we're all kind of waiting for the numbers to roll in. And you've got to do two things with your head. One, you win. Okay. And by the way, you really don't know what that means, but you know that just is what you want to do. And the other one is you don't win. You've got to psychologically manage yourself. So I'm sitting there and suddenly the first numbers come in. Came in at about 40% of the electorate and I'm up slightly. Okay. By a hair. And I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be all night. This is going to be all night. And, who was it? Aaron Fodeman was in the group. And Aaron looked at those numbers and he said, you got this. And I'm saying, how can I got him? I'm only 400 votes ahead. You got this. He worked for the White House, it turned out, and he understood politics much better than I did. So we wait for the second set of votes to come in. That's up to about 60, 70%. And the gap gets bigger. My lead gets bigger. And people are now popping corks. Okay. They're going, you got it. You got it. I said, no, there's still enough out we could lose. Anyway, the funny thing about that is the band at House of Beer was really loud when we all got started, but at 7:20 it got a little quieter. And at 7:40 it got nearly silent down there. It's no, you have mixed feelings towards your opponent. You know the person's quality, you know they come with a bona fides that are worth looking at. And so you both get to know them. You in some ways get to like them, but you want to beat them. So it's all three things. I got to tell you, my mind was so set on just getting beyond the election. I didn't even imagine what the next 2 months were going to be. That first 100, I had no clue whatsoever. But the first thing they make you do after one is, by the way, the manager comes walking in. David, were you there that night? Did you? Yeah. Okay. They come walking in and they got their hands out. That's all I remember. They had their hands out to congratulate. And at that moment, your brain just kind of goes into underdrive and you don't know who you're seeing or talking to. I'd kissed any baby in town. And then they say, tomorrow you got to meet the lawyer. Tomorrow I got to meet the lawyer. Yes, you have to meet the lawyer right away. I mean, this is like the 5th. on the 6th, I think it was 6th or 7th, I had me meeting the lawyer. Now, do you know why? Who wants to raise their hand? Sunshine. Bingo. Because now you're no longer a citizen. You no longer, if you talk to the wrong person in the wrong way about any future issue, Sunshine City, and you can get sued. It happens all the time. And by the way, there are law firms out there that troll sunshine violations. It's a revenue center for them. So you got to be careful. I went through that. By the way, that was a 4-hour session with the attorney. No. And by the way, she said, I know you're not going to remember much of this, but I'll tell you again later. And that was probably the most accurate thing she said. Now, the first 100 days are very interesting because remember, this is the first part of November. You're getting ready to hit Thanksgiving and Christmas. You said for elections. Now, let's get to the serious part of being a commissioner in that first 100 days. Because it's important that you see the issue. If you really want to have fun, talk to somebody about the downtown parking garage. Now, by the way, that parking garage is on the razor's edge right now because the state is passing a bill to end CRAs, Community Redevelopment Act. If that gets passed in its current form, we can't get the loans fast enough to make that garage happen. So that garage may not happen. Now, I don't care what your opinion is on the garage. Some people really think downtown businesses can't survive without it. Other people think it's going to be an eyesore. I've seen the architecturals on it. It is the best looking garage I've ever seen. I'm serious. I've seen garages. I think the very best might be one in Kansas City where it's next to the library, that they use the book facade on the front of it. So it looks like a library shelf. Okay. But this is the second best garage I've ever seen. But we may not get it. You know what that does for parking downtown, particularly after Ocean Optics closed. Please go down on roller skates because you're not going to find a parking place, particularly during season. So we got to get that garage. The Skinner Boulevard project, all of you have been going around the Skinner Boulevard project. Good news, it should be done on schedule, which means we'll probably open up the road March next year. Sorry, turns out laying asphalt takes a lot of time. The former City Hall Park. By the way, that sounds like an easy one. No, not an easy one. Now there, you nailed the issue. It's the bathroom. Okay? And everybody wants to move the bathrooms because what they're doing is trying to use the old plumbing from City Hall to make it cheaper to put the bathrooms on, which puts it right in the center of everything. So yeah, that's one of our debates. Talked about CRA. Oh, by the way, small little building available if anybody wants to buy it, called Coca-Cola. We got that one. Affordable housing. One of the toughest issues in town. We have a new project that's off the pages right now. We've approved it. I think we have one more shot at it for 78 units on Main Street. It's going to be very nice. Right behind Lucan's Liquors, which scares us a little bit, but nonetheless, that's where we're going to put it for them. The other big issue is budgeting in an uncertain economy. Would you like to have a $140 million budget that you have to balance in this economy, where China's having trouble figuring out how to balance their budget? We are going to have some issues. And the next thing we know, we're hearing that the Canadians may not be coming back next year, at least not in the volume. So we're looking at some programs to make them know they're welcome. I'm recommending everybody get those little lapel pins with the American and the Canadian flag on. By the way, there's a new 4-letter word in town. FEMA. Yeah. How many of you have had fun with FEMA? Yeah, we all have had fun with FEMA. And we don't know if it's going to be walking around in 6 months. We just don't know. But we're betting on it big time because we got no other choices. Oh, and then there's the substantial damage letters. Did anybody get a substantial damage letter? Oh, that's nice to see. But some people are. which means that the damage of your home is over 50% of its value and you need to move out. FEMA will not insure you. Nobody will insure you. You're being evicted. They're moving people away from the coast through a federal program. Stormwater management. Well, we planned our city on stormwater that would be at about 7 inches, 8 inches, okay, over a 24-hour period. Now, that's a lot of water. Okay, that if you're walking around every square foot in this town, it's halfway up your ankle. That's a lot of water. Turns out we needed more. Turns out we needed more like 12, 14. And so some areas that never flooded, 40 feet flooded. And they're wondering why. And they're talking to us. So we have to make some decisions. Are we going to build infrastructure for 12 inches in 24 hours? That's a question. By the way, every inch is not expensive. It's incrementally more expensive. At each inch you plan for, double your cash outlay. It's just that expensive. The marina. I know Dave loves the marina. I love the marina. I got a boat in there that's totally useless. Makes the greatest water wake you ever saw. We got to get it open. And we're doing our best. But by the way, there was a plan to redo the marina before the storms. And so these things have collided. So are we just going to restore the marina to what it was before, which a lot of people advocated for? Or are we going to go to the next step and get into the marina of the future that we had a plan to make? By the way, the marina was obsolete, growing more and more obsolete every day. So we knew we had to do some things there. And a plan was on the books. We said, boy, wouldn't it be nice if we could get FEMA to pay for half of this plan or maybe even more? So that was the collision. But everybody wanted back on their boats within months of the storm. It wasn't practical. It wasn't safe. And so a lot of angry people. And by the way, there were engineers showing up and all kinds of people saying, you can get this open. Yes, we can get it open, but we may disqualify ourselves for the FEMA money, which could mean $10 million not coming to the city in new development. But if we wait 18, 19 months, we might get a brand new marine. Those are some of the dilemmas we're facing. Okay. Honeymoon Island. Now, the city does not own Honeymoon Island. That's a state project. By the way, they've done pretty good out there, actually. But the ferry's no longer running. Okay. We don't know how soon it might be running, but we have visited with our state officials, and they're doing their very best, I think. But there's still a bunch of angry people. By the way, Honeymoon Island is open. North Beach is beautiful. They've restored the sand on the North Beach. You can walk from the lower parking lot around the North Beach. It'll be one of the best walks you ever have in your life. Caladesi's not open because the ferry's closed. Until we get both piers open, it's not going to be operable. I'm thinking we may be able to get that ferry going within the next 2 months. Cross your fingers. The new water park. Now, here's the problem. We've got the new water park on the books, okay? But we don't know what our budget's going to look like next year. How can you go out and spend $6 million on a water park when you don't know if you're going to be able to move the trash off the streets because of budget issues? So we're having budget meetings right now, dealing with best, worst, and worst case scenarios. Oh, and by the way, how many people play pickleball? Have you tried the new courts?
Yeah.
Do you like them? Do you know your neighbor? Yeah, I know. They're very crowded. By the way, people are coming from far and wide. You get to our pickleball courts, but the neighbors don't like the noise. We've had the neighbors show up in a commission meeting telling us how wonderful the sound is that pickleball makes. So just imagine that. This facility right here, the golf club. Let's see, I think it's 29 is the 100th anniversary. It's 27 or 29. Does anybody know offhand? It's coming up. We're going to have the 100th anniversary. It's been a beautiful project. But the project meant for almost a full year, our golf club members couldn't play golf because we tore the whole thing down to rebuild it. Turns out that was cheaper. Gladys Douglas Park sounds like a great idea, doesn't it? It is a great idea. It's a wonderful acquisition, cost us a lot of money, and now we're maintaining. But we've got a natural preserve there. And I mean, it's a natural preserve, even superior to any other park in the area. We're doing our best not to interfere with the natural flora and fauna of that, what is Gladys Douglas. Cybersecurity, does anybody remember when the city was hacked? Oh, what a mess that was. But we now have one of the best systems. I can't get into my computer at the office because that system is so darn good. Code compliance, senior services, trail safety, these are just some of the issues that we're facing. Yeah, isn't that interesting? We're all in agreement, we just don't know what to do about it because the trail is not administered by the city. The trail is administered by the county. That's theirs. Here's an interesting paradox. On Douglas Street, you can go 25 miles an hour on Douglas Street downtown. On the trail, you can only supposed to be able to go, no, it's 15. It's 15 miles an hour at Douglas, right downtown. But if you're on the trail, you could go 20.
And people go more than.
Oh, I know. And don't you just love the electric bikes that are up to 35 miles an hour on the trail? And by the way, the predominance is early morning workers trying to get to the office. They get on there, and unfortunately, that's also a time a lot of our runners and walkers like to get out too because it's before work. The state legislature's trying to take money away from the city and perceptibly put it back into your pockets. The only problem is you won't be able to flush your toilets if they went, because there won't be any services left. Safety, firefighting, all of that will go out the window if the legislature passes what looks like a tax deduction on your property tax. That's what we're facing. Now, the nice thing is, like I was, and I'll admit it, 2 years ago, I didn't think about all this stuff. It's not what I did. I might see an issue every once in a while. I might go, wow, we need to do something about that. And then I'd go on about my life. Well, I don't get that privilege anymore. And there's 4 others of us. Mo Freeney, got to be one of the best mayors I've ever seen. Steve Sandbergen ran with me. We had a lot of fun. And of course, there's Jeff Gow, one of the most lovable human beings you'll ever run across. And there's also Rob Walker. These are the people that are with me or dealing with all of these issues. It's a little scary some days. By the way, I had to give a proclamation the other day. Worst proclamation. And by the way, they don't really let you choose your own words on the proclamations. And I read one of the sentences and it was about 87 words long. And so I'm sitting there and it's a proclamation on behalf of city workers, public service workers. And it was one of those that I felt really sincere about because I'd seen what was going on in DC and the abuse of our public servants up there. And so I got into it and I suddenly realized that I just made up a sentence in the middle of it. But you do that, and it's what happens. They grade us every once in a while. By the way, some of my favorite quotes are when they came to us on the Tetra Tech renewal of their contract, which by the way was $1 million in total to get us to be able to deal with FEMA better. I was sitting there and they asked for my comments and I said, you don't buy half a horse. And what that meant is we'd already spent like $250,000 on Tetra Tech. We need to spend another 700. And I said, you just don't buy half a horse. So I've been using aphorisms all through my period up there. And we have to inject a little levity into the system. Oh, and by the way, the commissioners don't control anything. Now people come to us and say, what about this problem? We had one we were talking about today, which is electricity over at Weaver Park. And how can we fix that? And I'm going, I can't go to Parks and Rec as a commissioner. That's not appropriate. Now, if I have a beef, I need to go to the manager. Now, do you know how many times that means I go to the manager? That means she's going to be sick of, she already is sick of seeing me. Well, hope so. But you all think that if you come to me, I go fix it. I can't get my own trash picked up. So we don't control really anything. We count on the manager to manage all of that. She's one of the most professional people I've ever dealt with. She is challenged by a set of circumstances I would not want to have if it was my occupation ever. And she does it with grace. Thank you for the time.
Thank you so much for that and for all of you and the other commissioners and certainly the city staff do for our larger community.